Hello, my Bill 1000 Nation. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully, everyone's having a great day. If not, I hope it gets better from here. We are back with another That Chapter. This one was requested by a viewer. It is titled The Manhunt for Christopher Dorner. Now, we have a couple of requests for that chapter. I promise I am getting to them. I swear. I haven't forgot. Maybe. I don't know. Let's get into today's story. Go ahead, turn them lights down low, put on something comfy, go up with someone special. Let's get caught up in the hunt. Yeah.
Chief, you used the term coward and you discount his manifesto. What do you think of this suspect?
I think my opinion of the suspect.
I am loving these videos. Me manifesto. I don't know why I have to say manifesto like that. Me manifesto. But I seen it one time in a movie or a TV show, and it has stuck with me ever fucking since. And I was little, and now every time I hear it, it brings back just childhood memories.
Is unprintable, but you're right. The manifesto, I think, speaks for itself in terms of evidence of a depraved and abandoned mind and heart, and the cowardly way that he ambushed your public servants.
Hey you and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, what we're gonna do is we're going to look at the
Looking snazzy, big dog. Coming in, denim up. Hell yeah.
manhunt of Christopher Dorner. This one is pretty damn shocking, so get comfortable, because he essentially went on a rampage for about a week in California. There were a lot of shootings, a lot of deaths, and this is pretty much...
For a week? How do you go on a rampage for a fucking week? How do you eat? How?
It's just a generally chilling case all round, so it's pretty exciting, but not really in the good way. As usual, we'll get into the whole shebang, the who, what, why, where, when. Roll the intro.
Let's give her a go. I said it for you, people. I got you.
So, before we get into this epic manhunt, which, let me tell you, gets crazier the longer it went on, who are we talking about? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Christopher Dorner. Christopher was born in New York and grew up in Southern California. Christopher was the
Like, the name sounds familiar, but I don't know.
only African-American student in his school from 1st grade to 7th grade, when he got into fights due to his race. When he was a teenager,
Damn.
Christopher decided his calling was to become a police officer, and he joined a youth program offered by the police department in La Palma, Orange County. Christopher graduated from Southern Utah University in 2001 with a major in political science and a minor in psychology. While there, he also played football running back for the university from 99 to 2000, so he was a big guy, and good for him. Christopher joined the United States Navy Reserves in 2002 after he left university, eventually reaching the rank of lieutenant. During his time there, he received a Navy Rifle Marksmanship Ribbon and a Navy Pistol Shot Ribbon. Oof, as you can imagine, that'll come into it later,
Damn.
him being really good at pew pew. Now, while he was a naval reservist, he joined up with the LAPD, open up, entering the police academy in 2005. Neighbours of Christopher described him as admired, well-liked, and a man who usually kept to himself. He had been married, no kids. He divorced in 2007. Christopher, he was
It
someone who
happens.
made friends just effortlessly. He was a nice
Oh, yeah.
guy, always had a big smile on his face. But a lot of ex-girlfriends would also say he could just turn on them like in an instant. He had some issues,
Damn.
let's say. Now this is when the not so fun begins.
I mean, I can imagine, though, being, like, treated like shit and having to fight and all kinds of other shit all the time because of his race, just because he was in school. Dude's gonna have some issues. I'm just saying.
In 2007. In July of that year, Christopher, as he was still in his probationary period, so paired with a training officer by the name of Therese Evans, they were both called to the Doubletree Hotel in San Pedro after a report of a disturbance. Now, Teresa didn't really think much of Christopher and his police abilities. She thought he was a bit sloppy, a bit clumsy. He had accidentally shot himself in the hand at the police academy. But he had those ribbons. He had once told her that the LAPD had discriminated against him as a black man, and he intended to sue. Alright, so the event in question that really set off what would happen. The offender was a man named Christopher Gettler, who suffered from mental health issues. They arrested him and that was that. Not really though. After Teresa warned Christopher that he needed to improve his police work, Christopher would file a complaint against Teresa Evans of kicking Christopher Gettler during the arrest after Gettler was tased and had given up resisting. The LAPD would open an investigation, and one of the things that really went against Christopher during this was that he waited a couple of weeks before reporting that Teresa kicked this guy, and also the fact that it kind of seemed like he was doing it in revenge against Teresa because she said he needed to improve in a couple of areas. It comes up again and again when we're talking about Christopher. He was a guy who kept like a mental list in his mind of people who had wronged him, and he was someone who was always out for revenge. 3 hotel employees who witnessed most of the incident,
that makes a horrible combination,
were then interviewed by the LAPD detectives, and they claimed they didn't see the training officer kick the man. Gettler, he was brought to the police station and given medical treatment for injuries to his face, but at the time he didn't mention that he'd been kicked. But he would later say he was kicked. Kind of. What I mean by that is Gettler later told his father he was kicked, and during a videotaped interview with Christopher's attorney, he again said he was.
Being interviewed and tape recorded with his permission is Christopher Gettler. Is that correct? Correct, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you about the police contact that you had with the at the DoubleTree Hotel. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember being taken into custody by the police?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Do you remember whether there was a struggle?
Mm-hmm.
And during that struggle, were you kicked in the face?
Mm-hmm.
You have to say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember how many times you were kicked in the face?
Once.
Okay. And do you remember where you were kicked in the face?
Right here.
Okay. And do you remember who kicked you in the face?
An officer.
Do you remember what sex? Was it a male or female?
It was a female.
However, when Gettler testified at Christopher's disciplinary hearing, his responses to questioning were described as generally incoherent and non-responsive. So okay, anyway, it's kind of hard to tell if he actually was kicked by Teresa, whether this incident happened. Let's move on. So the investigation would decide that there's no kicking, and that Christopher had lied. And in 2008, he was fired from the police service. Fired for what they say was false statements, which is pretty darn harsh, but I don't know. He would appeal, helped by former police captain, now attorney, Randall Kwan, but get nowhere. Essentially, it was a he said, she said, and the police stuck with the training officer rather than the probie. After this, Christopher found himself in a deep depression. He was in his home in Las Vegas, isolated from family, cut off from friends, with nothing to do but seethe. An ex-girlfriend had posted a warning on the website don'tdatehinggirl.com, saying, "If you value your sanity, stay away from this guy." She described him as super paranoid, always thinking someone's out to get him. And so if he was that kind of person, you can imagine how getting fired for whether it was true or not would make him very angry.
Yeah.
It began on the 1st of February 2013. Anderson Cooper.
I have never been one of those people who thinks someone's always out to get me. But I'm also one of those people, I can't take shit seriously. I try to get myself mad at it. It's like, and then it's just like, fuck. I don't know.
Of all people, received a package at the CNN office that basically gave Christopher's entire case against the LAPD.
Do it.
2 days later, the bodies of Monica Kwan and her fiancé, Keith Lawrence, were found shot to death in Keith's car outside their condo in Irvine. Both were riddled with bullets and had been shot in the back of the head, execution style. The police saw that Monica still had a diamond ring on her finger, so they knew it wasn't a robbery. It was a close-range ambush. There was no evidence of a fight. Neither of them had enemies. Both worked regular jobs. She was a basketball coach at Cal State Fullerton. Keith was an officer in the Department of Public Safety. They had gotten engaged days earlier. They asked Monica's father, Randall Kwan, who might want to hurt his daughter. He had been the first Chinese-American captain at the LAPD and had run a squad targeting Asian gangs. In recent years, he had...
So did Christopher dude go after his daughter because he couldn't do anything for him? Man, he tried to... Oh, bro.
worked as a lawyer representing cops facing termination. And Randall couldn't think of anyone who would want to hurt him or his family. During the investigation into this double homicide, police wondered why no one had heard the gunshots. It happened right outside an apartment building, surrounded by people. Someone must have heard something. But they didn't. So then the police began to think that maybe the ambusher, the attacker, had used a silencer during the murders. They also found out that someone had been stalking Monica in the...
I have a question. I've never personally used a silencer. I'm a loud person. It is what it is. Do silencers help out that much? I mean, I imagine that they do, but is there like an amount on how many times you can use it before it just don't silence no more? Is there like, does it cut it down? All right, look, like I said, I don't know shit about silencers. I really don't. I go hunting. You don't put a silencer on a shotgun. I guess you can, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it don't matter.
few days previous. The very next day, Christopher posted his manifesto online. It was an 11,000 word document. He posted it from the High View Inn and Suites in Manhattan Beach.
Manifesto.
He said his motive for the shootings of Monica and Keith and all the shootings to come were to clear his name. Sure, it makes sense. He vowed to hunt members of the Board of Rights who would hurt...
Clear your name from being just what? People thinking you're a piece of shit. So I'm going to clear my name of that by going around and making myself a murderer.
His case. He would hunt the LAPD hierarchy that had sanctioned his punishment. He was convinced that his former lawyer, Randall Kwan, had been loyal to the LAPD rather than to him. He would hunt him and his loved ones. He listed those who had wronged him throughout his life, and also those he would miss, because he knew he wasn't coming out of what was to come alive. He would miss friends, colleagues, the fact that he wouldn't get to see the hangover tree. He dodged a bullet there. He would also miss Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Chris Christie, George H.W. Bush, General Petraeus, Tim Tebow, Bill Cosby, Anthony Bourdain, and Charlie Sheen, among others. Times have changed since 2013, alright. Mainly, in his manifesto, he named a shitload of police officers who were on his list of enemies. He, essentially just declared war on the LAPD.
Former police officer, and you hear this police chief in LA, Charlie Back, talking. He was asked, this guy was trained. He worked with the LA Police Department for a couple of years, not to mention he's a marksman, ex-reservist. Right. So he's trained well. He appears to know what he's doing. He is. I mean, he was an officer, not an enlisted man, but an officer in the Naval Reserve. And so, yeah, he knows what he's doing. He knows weapons. He's a rifle marksman, pistol marksman in the reserves. He's been very well trained. LAPD, some of the best trained officers in the country. He was there from 2005 to 2008. And I tell you, this manifesto, it scares the hell out of me. Let's get to it. We have a couple chunks. I want to just read this first one here. Quote, you better have all your officers, radio, phone muster on or off duty every hour on the hour. You may have the resources and manpower, but you are reactive and predictable. Goes on, I have the strength and benefits of being unpredictable, unconventional, and unforgiving.
That is scary. Just
On the
those
5th
words
of February,
right there.
Christopher
It's
checked
scary.
into the naval base in San Diego. He was named a prime suspect in the double homicide on the 6th, and he checked out of the naval base on that same day. Or rather, he just left the naval base. He skipped regular checkout procedures, probably because he knew he was, things were getting hot. Christopher tried to steal a boat in San Diego, telling the 81-year-old owner, Carlos Caprioglio, while pointing a handgun at him, "I don't want to kill you, but you're gonna take me to Mexico." However, Christopher, knowing nothing about sailing, threw the rope that moored the boat into the water instead of onto the dock. The rope became entangled in the propeller. So his escape attempt to Mexico went nowhere. He tied up the owner,
Nowhere
stole
fast.
his cell phone, and just disappeared. On the 7th of February, 2 LAPD officers were driving at 1 a.m. to a protection detail for one of the officers named in Christopher's manifesto, when they were stopped by a man named Lee McDaniel. He told the 2 officers he'd seen a guy who looked just like Christopher at the gas station. Maybe you should, go take a look. The 2 officers, they popped over and they started following a suspicious looking pickup. When, all of a sudden, Christopher got out of the pickup and just opened up on the 2 cops.
Are you
Firing
fucking
at
serious?
them with his assault rifle, he grazed the forehead of one officer. He then sped
damn.
away. 20 minutes later, 2 officers of the neighbouring police department were ambushed while stopped at a red light. Christopher opened up with 13 rounds of armour-piercing ammunition, and one officer, Michael Crane, died shortly after the shooting. The other was rushed to a nearby hospital in critical condition for surgery,
Wow.
but he survived.
They made him angry. He ain't gonna stop until he gets what he wants or someone kills him.
It sounds like your officers were completely ambushed. Was there any intelligence? Was there any warning? Given that the LAPD was looking for this suspect, did those officers in that car last night on their patrol have any idea that there was a chance this suspect might do something like
Yes,
this? That they should be on extra alert?
Yesterday evening, the information was disseminated by the LAPD via the FBI's JRIC, the Joint Regional Intelligence Center. So all law enforcement agencies in the region were aware of that. We disseminated the information about the suspect and his vehicle and his intent to our officers, as I believe all agencies did last night. We are concentrating on calls for service that are of a high priority, that are threats to public safety, essentially. We're not going to go on barking dog calls today.
We saw at some of the perimeter of the scenes that officers from all different sort of agencies were carrying shotguns and rifles. I mean, how on edge are officers? I mean, they're being targeted, so how on edge would they be?
Well, I don't know that anybody's on edge, but certainly
on
officers
edge.
are prepared, officers are alert.
That means they on edge, bro. Like, you don't get prepared and be alert for no reason. They on edge. You're like, oh, fuck. This motherfucker, like, he gonna come. He's gonna get me. He don't care. He's unpredictable.
This is a somewhat unprecedented, or at least a very rare occurrence for us, where you have a trained and heavily armed person who is hunting for police officers.
Yeah, that's time to be scared of
As
shit.
you can imagine, LA turned into a bit of a war zone while this was going on. 2 times, police opened up on people they thought were Christopher. That's how kind of paranoid everybody became, especially the police.
Just
Jose
to go
was
back a
on
little
edge.
bit, this has left cops so
But, they're not on edge. They was on edge. I don't give a fuck what they said. If there's someone out there that's just trained and just marking cops left and right, every cop is going to be scared shitless. On edge. It just is.
jittery in the area, and there was actually a shooting that was based on mistaken identity. Cops thought that they had this guy, and that resulted in a shooting. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Wow.
Yes, Ryan, what happened was
It's
we were
awful.
talking about those security details. Well, in Torrance, California, in the Los Angeles area, the police were on watch for one of the men mentioned in the list. A truck pulled up. They suspected for a moment that this was the vehicle belonging to Dorner. Basically, they opened fire. They hit two a newspaper delivery man was hit in the hand. The other one was okay. And they opened fire on another vehicle in Torrance. No incident, no injuries there, but an innocent victim, all of this, as police were indeed on very high alert, Ryan.
Then,
High alert. Shit, they was scared, bro.
at 8:30 a.m. on February 7th, Christopher's burnt-out truck was found about 80 miles from Los Angeles, in Big Bear Lake. Inside the truck, deputies found the blackened parts of 2 AR-15 assault rifles, a charred portion of a Glock handgun, and the remains of a tent, a survival knife, and a camping stove. Scattered through the truck and in the surrounding snow were hundreds of high-caliber rifle rounds that had exploded in the fire. And Christopher Dorner had escaped into the mountains.
Oh shit.
Authorities would offer a $1 million reward for information leading to the capture of Christopher Dorner, but he wouldn't be captured. They'd never take Christopher.
I'm gonna go ahead and say I seen him. I thought it was Bigfoot. It wasn't Bigfoot. It was him. Man, you know how many calls they got? It was probably about as bad as Bigfoot sightings. Like every 5 seconds. No, we seen him. We seen him. $1 million, bro. I seen him. He's right there.
Alive.
Good morning, Dan, from snowy Southern California. Bad weather here has made it tough on the search efforts. Authorities had to call their troops off the mountain last night, but they are out there in force first thing this morning. So far, though, the only fresh glimpse of the fugitive were new pictures taken 2 weeks ago. Surveillance cameras captured these images of Christopher Dorner. The trouble is, they were taken 2 weeks ago in Orange County, not far from where Monica Kwan and her fiancé Keith Lawrence were murdered last Sunday. The last photos taken of Dorner before he disappeared. Signs like these, armed and dangerous, are on every freeway here, but so far no one has spotted him. Near blizzard conditions here in Big Bear Lake haven't helped. No eye in the sky, for one thing. In this weather, the helicopters can't fly. On the ground, not much better.
We're going to continue searching until either we discover that he left the mountain or we find
That
him.
was smart,
one of the
though.
two.
5 days.
Dude's smart. Like, that was genius to go there and just dip right in the middle of the fucking storm. Wow.
Days after Christopher's truck was found burnt out, Jim and Karen Reynolds stumbled upon him hiding in a cabin. He tied them up, and when he left, they called 911. Stealing their car, a chase by police quickly began. He managed to evade them, but crashed the car. Then, San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department deputies responded to a report of a carjacking of a truck at 12:20 p.m. and began looking for the vehicle on the ground and from the air. Thankfully, the truck's driver was not harmed.
I could tell it was Mr. Dorner. He came out of the snow at me with his rifle pointed at me. I wasn't going very fast, so I stopped, put my truck in park, put my hands up, and he came up and he said, "I don't want to hurt you. Just get out of your truck and start walking and take your dog." And that's what I did. I said, can I get her leash? And he said, "No, just start walking." It was clear from his demeanor that I wasn't one of his targets, and he just needed a vehicle, and I was happy to oblige.
When the truck was spotted, a chase began, with Christopher driving to and hiding in a cabin. Christopher then opened.
I really love how he said it looked like I wasn't, he didn't want nothing to do with me. He just wanted my car, and you know me. I'm happy to oblige. I mean, I know he meant to, I was happy to oblige. That way I didn't get shot in my fucking face, and me and my dog, we walked home. We was good. I know that's what he meant, but I don't know, just the way he said it.
Opened fire on 2 officers, hitting both and killing one, Detective Jeremiah McKay.
Wow. They're having just like an actual standoff out in the snow right now. Wow. This dude's crazy. What is all the smoke? What's on fire? Was the truck on fire from all the gunshots?
Christopher, knowing his time was up, then barricaded himself inside the cabin, and it was surrounded by police. Police initially attempted to force Christopher out of the cabin by using tear gas and demanding over loudspeakers that he surrender. When he didn't respond, police used a demolition vehicle to knock down most of the walls of the building. They then shot pyrotechnic tear gas canisters into the cabin, which resulted in the cabin catching fire. Shortly after, a single gunshot was heard from inside the cabin, and it burned throughout the night. The next day, the police found Christopher's charred remains.
Before we put that pyrotechnic chemical agent in, we made numerous PA announcements identifying him by name, asking him to surrender, telling him who we were, and asking him to come out. And then the pyrotechnic chemical agent was inserted.
Numerous assault weapons were recovered, as well as numerous semi-automatic handguns, one of which is a sniper rifle, a bolt-action .308 caliber, which is considered a very dangerous and high-powered weapon.
During the autopsy yesterday, the doctor who conducted the process concluded that the cause of death was a single gunshot wound to the head. We are not at this point ready to speak about the manner of death and tell you whether or not that it was as a result of a self-inflicted wound or another round. We will tell you that while we are still compiling the information and putting our reports together, the information that we have right now seems to indicate that the wound that took Christopher Dorner's life was self-inflicted.
Christopher's crusade achieved what he wanted, kind of. On Facebook, pages sprung up praising Christopher Dorner as a folk hero who had dared to defy the law enforcement establishment.
LAPD was prosecutor, judge, jury, and executioner yesterday. They burned him alive. Apparently, burning people alive is now considered appropriate behavior for the police. From the very beginning, Dorner had found plenty of sympathizers.
I just want to start off by saying that I perfectly support 100% what Chris Dorner is doing.
I read this manifesto, and I believe him.
On Facebook, more than 18,000 likes for a page titled, "We Stand with Christopher Dorner." On Instagram, the rapper Ab Soul spoke for many when he said this about Dorner's rampage. "This was a necessary evil. God bless you, sir."
People like anti-heroes, and we have a history of rooting for everybody from Bonnie and Clyde and Butch Cassidy.
USC professor Karen North studies the intersection of psychology and social media.
One of the things that social media has allowed us to do is to join conversations and not be as accountable for our opinions.
He portrayed the LAPD as a hotpot of racism, and he was the vigilante, exposing the corruption of the police.
Ew.
He wasn't, though. He was a murderer, and
It was
whatever
like
wrongs
Batman.
had been done to Christopher, just or unjust, his revenge wasn't worth it. 4 people died, 2 of them completely innocent civilians.
Yeah, that's fucked up. But in his head at that time, there's casualties of war everywhere. Now, I guarantee that's all he was. Yeah.
It made me realize you are my winning lotto ticket. You're my best friend, you're my girlfriend, and I've had you all this time, so it's about time to cash you in.
I'm worth
So,
a million.
You're worth
Billion.
more than a
Just
million billion. So,
What in the world? You do
Monica, Lisa Kwan,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Open the box.
would you marry me?
Yeah.
He was a cold-blooded killer. He had serious issues and a legitimate, maybe, gripe with the LAPD, but
There's other ways
was
to
this
handle it.
the way to go about dealing with it? On a
Oh, man.
rampage across the city? During the course of the manhunt,
I'm not saying it was the correct way. I'm not saying it wasn't the correct way. All I know is sometimes it does take great lengths for people to understand what other people are going through. Do I think he could have went about this better? Who am I to say or judge? Like, I don't think anyone innocent should die. I don't think anyone should have died, period. Because, I mean, nobody was trying to kill him. Yeah, I know things didn't go his way, but things don't go people's way all the fucking time. And no one, you know how much shit doesn't go my way, and I still yet to, like, murder anyone for any reason. You just find another way to get there. And to me, heck, that's more fun than actually getting there. I don't know. I love sitting back, making the plan, figuring things out. When it's actually done, what do you do with yourself then? It's like, oh, it's over. You start another thing. So I don't want to say he was justified in doing what he did. I will say that if it got to the point to where he felt like he had no other option, then to him, it was justified. To him, he had no other option. I feel that there could have been another way and people didn't have to die. That's just me. I'm weird.
The LAPD decided to review the Christopher Dorner firing. The conclusion was the same. He had told a lie about his training officer and his badge had been properly stripped. Was it though? Really? I mean, probably. If this was how he acted after he lost his job going on a rampage, who knows what kind of damage he could have done if he had a badge on him. I don't know. And so ends the story of Christopher Dorner.
We may never know.
Thank you so much for watching. I really...
Thank you, Mike. As always, it's a pleasure being here. Wow, that was a crazy one, y'all. I mean, what do y'all think? Was he right? I mean, yeah. I think he was okay in doing stuff. I don't think the killing of stuff, but I feel like he had a right to be upset. I mean, yeah, he might have waited a couple weeks and he's probably like, look, I'm not going to tell anyone that you did that. And then she's like, okay, thank you, blah, blah, blah. And then she starts running his mouth. And it's like, you know something? No. You can't be trusted. I'm going to let them know what you did. You want to be an asshole towards me? I'm going to show you're dirty. And yeah, he might have been doing it still, out of a get back, but who's to say it didn't actually fucking happen? Was old dude coached into saying that he was kicked? If not, then he was fucking kicked. If 2 out of 3 people say you kicked them in the face, more likely you kicked them in the fucking face. I don't want to get caught up in a tangent and say something I regret I didn't say earlier. Alright. If you all enjoyed today's video as much as I did, please leave a thumbs up if you're a fan of the spooky, scary, strange, or things that just make you go, was he though? Think about subscribing. I am wondering. As always, be good to one another, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Oh. I still say there was other ways to go about it that didn't involve taking people's lives. That's just me. I'm a glass half full type of person.